How we doing, everybody? Today, you can see that my logo has changed for this video. Boom. We're going to talk a little bit about Warmaster. More specifically, we're going to be doing a battle report to show how Warmaster plays, and how this pertains to the old world or Warhammer is really just to show you the difference between the two games that once sat side by side in the pantheon of Games Workshop. The Warmaster is a smaller scale, 10 millimeter scale war game, and it was done up by Rick Priestley, and there may have been other authors. Honestly, I don't have a list of all the authors. I just know that Rick Priestley champions this with his other system, which I'll show you. But this was the original rule book, and this thing has gone through some iterations. So we had Warmaster. Then they released Warmaster Ancients. And Warmaster Ancients is kind of where we are today still. There is a fan-based, community-based Warmaster rule set you can download, and I'll leave a link in the video, called Warmaster Revolution, which, as I understand it, is nothing more than taking Warmaster and updating it with the Ancients rules, which we had been doing the last time I played Warmaster, which was in 2005. The last game I did was an actual Ancients campaign where I was playing the Romans in a Carthage campaign. But we used to incorporate Warmaster into our fantasy campaigns in both 5th and 6th edition. Warmaster itself has it's not a live game, so to speak, but we have Hail Caesar by Warlord Games. And Hail Caesar uses a lot of Warmaster. And if you were to, like, when you play Hail Caesar or read the rules, it's essentially Warmaster in 28 millimeter with significant changes to the rules, but you could see the bones laid underneath it. If you're a fan of Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, which is a rule set written up by Alessio and headed up by Parabellum Wargaming, there's a lot of Warmaster's bones in that game as well that you can pick out. So the game itself, the engine itself, has gone through some changes over the years, but it's a significantly different type of game than Warhammer, though they're both war games. Warmaster is definitely a more classic war game, though, in comparison to the two. So we're going to do a battle report. We're going to look at a 1,000 point game between Chaos and Empire. And we're going to call this the second battle. So in the last battle report, Empire had defeated Chaos in the initial raid, but the rest of the Norse army has landed, and now the Empire has to try to repel them. So, will they be successful? We'll find out. Some things to point out. It has been 15 years since I last played Warmaster. And while I read the rulebook a couple times before embarking on this game, I got a couple things wrong, which I will point out in the report. And I'm sure there's other things that I got wrong that other people will point out. In fact, I can't remember a Warhammer game, even in the tournament league, that I ran where something didn't get played wrong in pretty much every game. And that's just the way it is, I guess. And that's the challenge of a system that's not streamlined. It can be a little bit irritating because there's a lot of rules to try to remember. So I try to play it as best as I can, what feels right. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it's not technically correct. And honestly, that's okay. Do your best. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and check out Warmaster. All right. So here we have Battle Report 2, Chaos versus Empire at 1,000 points. Let's see what the difference is between Warmaster and Warhammer. This battle also takes place near the same area as our last, so right across from the Sea of Claws, near Ehrengrad and Kislev, the northern Nordheim province of the Empire sits, and they're constantly being raided by the Norse. And this battle is one of those battles. So when we look at the two game systems, some differentiations, and what I'm doing is I'm actually pointing out why Warmaster never really caught on as well as Warhammer. And there's a lot of different reasons, and this is probably not an exhaustive list. This is just the list. This is a list of things that I hear pretty much all the time and have for years and years, why we could never get this game to kick off. For the first, Warmaster is 10 millimeter. And the image behind that, those are Warmaster stands. So you don't get as much detail at a 10 millimeter as you do 28 millimeter. So hobbyists, people who play GW games, are often there for the models. And so when the models aren't super awesome, they have no interest. And so it's just that by itself was something that held Warmaster back. Now, as I mentioned, Hail Caesar was built on the Warmaster engine, or appears to be built on the Warmaster engine, and that game is 28 millimeter, though Rick Priestley himself has conversions in there, tables, because he's not as super concerned about scale as a lot of people are. So what that means is he's got rules. Basically, you can come down to 15 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 5 millimeter if you want, or 6 millimeter, excuse me. And also the base size rules. They're not rigid. Like everyone right now in the old world is so worried about where the base size is going to be. I have to have the right base size. And people in AOS were like that too. Oh, you got to have the right base size. I honestly am one of those people who just don't care enough. And Rick Priestley's one of those people as well. So his rules, like if you look at Hail Caesar, there's a range. Like your infantry stand should be between this and this. So as long as you're within that range, you're fine. Warmaster is more macro strategy, whereas Warhammer is more micro strategy. So micro strategy, you're down at the individual warrior level. You're customizing your units with standard bearers and musicians and champions and magic banners, and your characters have all these super little powers and spells and different configurations, and it's a very list-oriented combo type game, or can be. And of course, Warhammer was always built around combos. Some editions just kind of laid back on those, and others weren't as heavy on them, but like AOS cranked that thing to 11. And that's intentional. And in the game design sphere, there is a certain crowd that basically it makes the most money. And it's all rooted in the Magic the Gathering explosion in the 90s. So a lot of game designers look at that. And a lot of that's combo-based, wombo combo stuff. But anyhow, Warmaster's macro strategy. So you're coming out and you're looking at it as an army. So it's not the individuals or customizing the individuals and tweaking them. It's really just your army. And what you'll see there is the stats are very similar to each other. So that helps with point balance. But that's not, I mean, for someone who likes combo-based gaming, that's a turnoff. Warmaster is command and control, whereas Warhammer is deterministic. And when I say deterministic, what that word means is I know that given an input, I will always get the same output. So in Warhammer, if I tell my cavalry unit to charge, it's going to charge. Now in 7th edition, it was always going to charge the movement times 2. And in 8th edition, they added random charges, so it didn't become as deterministic, but I knew that my cavalry was always at least going to try to charge. Warmaster is about command and control, which is what classic war games were about, in which case the game centers heavily on your ability to give orders and to be able to react when your units don't do what they're told. And units don't do what they're told for a variety of reasons. They may just be unruly. They may just, your messengers didn't get the orders out in time. There's confusion. There's all kinds of things that happened in real battles. And that's what Warmaster is capturing, but is very unpopular with a lot of people because they want their guys to do exactly what they tell them. So you'll see that. Pared down stats versus list building. I kind of already touched on that. So I don't need to go over that again. Army-centric versus hero-centric. Heroes in this game are there for command purposes primarily. Their buffers and boosts to combat are minimal. So that takes some getting used to if you're used to having your Chaos Lord wade through enemy armies by themselves. This is definitely not that game. Gun lines. Shooting is not as effective in Warmaster. It's a support element. So you don't get a lot of shots, and what you do hit is there to support and kind of push back the enemy. You're not deleting whole armies with your gun lines like you can do in Warmaster. Magic is not as destructive as Warhammer magic is. Again, it's a support element. That's it. So both of those things are off-putting to a lot of people who want to see the superpowered spells ripping through the enemy armies and the superpowered gun lines. You can't do those things really in Warmaster. Heard an argument the scale is basically Warhammer, only smaller. I say to that yes and no. I do agree with some of the concepts of that complaint. You get essentially a very similar number of elements in Warmaster, except visually, obviously, you're going to have more guys. So it looks more visually impressive to me. However, like Empire can only have one cannon per 1,000 points, so you don't even get like your cannon batteries that you can see in historicals. So that's a complaint. They want to see it be more. They want to see more things like that, like cannon batteries and more guys. They want to see like more like Total Warhammer. So if you play Total Warhammer, you can get 1,000 people on a side, and that looks awesome. You can't really do that even in Warmaster. Not enough action, not killy enough. So Warmaster is not about killing as much as it's about positioning and taking objectives. And yes, killing matters, but it's not like in Warhammer or Age of Sigmar where you're just taking an eraser to your opponent's army right off the bat. I mean, you have to set up your moves. You're not going to see a lot of action right in the beginning, whereas in like Age of Sigmar, you're charging turn 1 and you're wiping out whole pieces of the enemy army. So it's not a lot of action, which to some people is a put off. And the last thing that I hear a lot of, it's not conducive to tournament play, which means no tournament standard. I don't really understand that complaint, to be honest with you. I think tournament play, you can make any game a tournament, so I don't know what that means. I think really what they're saying is it's not a game that a lot of tournament players are drawn to for some reason, and we could probably do a whole video on why that might be, but I would be speculating, so I'm not sure. But anyway, that's the difference between the games in a nutshell. You may have other things that are on your mind, and if you do, leave a comment. So looking at the 2 army rosters here, it's 197 Chaos Warriors or Marauders. You can see the stat blocks are very, very condensed, very simple. Unit of Warriors gets 4 attacks per stand. They can take 4 hits before a stand is removed, and they have a 4-up armor save, whereas Marauders can only take 3 hits and only have 3 attacks. But you can see they're also a lot less points. They're actually less than half the points. And the Empire army we're going to be playing with here's got 3 heroes. It's got 5 blocks of halberds. Each of those blocks of halberds has a skirmisher unit attached to it. So there's actually 4. You can see the asterisks here. That just indicates that they've got an extra block behind them, except for one of them. We've got a unit of crossbows, 2 units of handgunners, 2 units of pistoliers, and a hellblaster. So 308 men here, 1,000 points. The mission we're going to be doing is a simple battle line again, just for the sake of demonstration. In this case, scoring in this is really, really easy. You get full points if a unit's destroyed. You get 50% if you can take a unit down to 1 stand. And the point at which one army is reduced to 50% of its stand count, the game ends. The army withdraws. Empire Wizard spells. He gets 4 spells. You can try 1 per turn. Fireball will just do 3 shooting attacks, like a bolt thrower to each unit under the line. Voice of Command will move a single unit. Weird Enchantment lasts until the end of opposing player's next turn. That unit moves at half pace and counts all enemies as terrifying, which reduces the number of dice they can throw in combat. And Teleport lets the wizard move wherever he wants. Characters by default can move 60 centimeters at the end of the command phase. Characters can also not be targeted by anything, so you can't shoot at them, you can't cast spells at them, you can't try to attack them. The only way characters die is if they're in a unit and that unit's destroyed. So when they attach themselves to a unit, they lend that unit an extra set of dice for attacks. It's similar to Conquest, except in Conquest the heroes are a lot more powerful. So they kind of blended Warmaster, where you could jump into a unit. And in fact, in Conquest, your guys have to be in a unit. With Warhammer, where they still got to tweak and micromanage a little bit, which is one reason why I think that game does as well as it does. Chaos spells. You see them here. Boon of Chaos, 4-up. The unit the character has joined gains an attack per stand. Anger of the Gods. All enemies within 30 centimeters are at -1 to their command, which is actually a pretty big deal. Rage of Chaos on a 5-up. The friendly unit engaged in combat, not required to be line in sight. They're going to gain up to D6 attacks per stand, and they can keep rolling dice. So it's like a gamble. And the moment you roll doubles, the other side gets those attacks instead of you. So you have to determine how many dice you want to risk throwing and not throwing doubles in that case. And then the Curse of Chaos, a 5-up enemy unit within line of sight, not in combat, gets 3 shooting attacks with no armor and driven back as normal. The thing with Empire is they don't really have a lot of armor in their army. Their halberdiers have a 6-up armor save, and their pistoliers have a 5. So something like with no armor allowed, minimally useful. Not useful, but minimally useful. All right, so here's a deployment. So right off the bat, for me, visually, this is a lot more endearing. This makes me happy, and this is why I liked Warmaster more than Warhammer, and why I rank Warmaster as my favorite fantasy war game. It really, when I examine my heart and soul, it's really it's the visual. I feel like I'm commanding an army in this case, and it's got enough character where I'm happy. So they're deploying in this. The deployment for this is 80 centimeters away. In this case, the Chaos Army is right on the line of where they're allowed to be, and the Empire has gone ahead and backed up 19 centimeters, basically. So they've taken this hill right here, and that hill. Let's see if I can get my little pen here. I like my pen. This hill right here becomes a nasty fortress, basically. So in Warmaster, terrain matters a lot. And that's another big reason why I like Warmaster. I like any war game where the terrain is something you have to manage as well as the other enemy army, as well as your own army. Because that was what battlefield control and management was all about. Seeing what was out there on and having to work around it. It's just like being a football coach, I guess, the football field's always going to be the football field, but you can't control the weather. So you have to be able to respond to that. And this is my little analogy. I'm sure it's flawed in many, many ways, and someone will let me know that. But that's kind of how I see it. So the hill, why that's a big deal. Number one, the guns on the crest can shoot over their guys. Okay. And that's pretty common in most games. But you actually have an advantage of being on a hill. These guys count as having defended this hill. So it means hitting them is harder. And that's really the crucial part right there. Hitting these guys is harder, and it's harder to drive them off of it. So the idea here, this is where a lot of their guns are and their Hellblasters posted, and they're waiting for the enemy army to come back. And I noticed that it decided it was going to advance my slides for me, so you got to get a head start. So they're on this hill for that. Woods are the same way. If you're in a wood, you're defended. So infantry can get in these woods, and cavalry and chariots can't get in there. So you have to have infantry flush other infantry out, so you can hold these points, and it becomes more important. So here's our war line stretched out. Chaos, what they're doing, they're basically bricking their stuff to be warrior marauder units trying to help each other out as such. And then on the wings, they have their fast elements, which are going to try to push and control these sides. The Empire is going to match that. They've got both their pistoliers on the wings to try to meet the Chaos fast elements. Pistoliers have a 15 centimeter range, which is like this. It's very, very short. But they have 360 degree line of sight. Gunners have a 30 centimeter range, which is, that's estimating, that's about 30 centimeters in this. The Hellblaster also goes up to about 30 centimeters, so as you can see, he's going to have to move, or they're waiting for Chaos to just swarm them. We have this right here, 3 blocks of halberds. This is as effective as Marauders, and only slightly less effective than the Warriors. So they can actually hold their own. The Warriors can chew through the halberds pretty easy, but notice the halberdiers have that extra block of skirmishers, which is going to give them an extra supporting attack, and also gives you an extra point of combat resolution. This unit of halberds over here on the hill does not have that. And then your 3 heroes are spread out for command purposes. All right. So this one was fun. So this is going to highlight a lot of reason why people hate this game. And I want to, again, watch to the end to see how the game actually ends. So this is turn 1, and I normally like to break my turns up by which side, unless there's just so little happening that I can condense it. And in this case, I can condense it because both General and Wizard failed giving commands. They both rolled higher than their leadership score. Wizard's got an 8 for Chaos, and the General's got a 9, and we both failed. So the whole line kind of sits there. Now, there is a rule I wasn't 100% on that basically says if the General's giving his first order to a unit and it fails, they can move a half move. So one of these units could have moved 15 centimeters up. I found that out later, and so that didn't happen. So that's the first goof. But in a way, I'm fine with that because I want the battle line to stay together anyhow. Down here, you can see the Empire has a lot better go of it. The guns have to move up because what they're trying to do is get in range because, again, 30 centimeters is not very far. So they're going to move up, and the General has these halberds move up as a unit, or individually. Here's a big thing that always catches me. Because I play so many different games, or I have different rule sets in my head. In Hail Caesar, and there's another game I play where you can give brigade orders. They don't have to touch each other. They just have to be within like 2 or 3 inches, and you can issue an order to a whole group with one command, and they move forward. In Warmaster, they actually have to be touching. So because they're not touching here, I couldn't give a brigade order. So I had to individually give orders to move these guys up, which sucks. But you notice these halberds move to touch the crossbows, who also move up because they have the same problem with the gunners as 30 centimeters is, right about there. But then once that's done, when you're giving orders, you have 20 centimeter increments. And every 20 centimeter increment you're at is -1 to your command roll. So the farther away the unit is, and you're trying to give an order, the harder it is to get that order off. So you have to really position these heroes correctly. And the Wizard's trying to get the Pistoliers to move, but he failed that roll. And the hero tried to get the Pistoliers to move, and he failed that roll. They're on an 8. And when the General fails to issue an order, that's it. So that's the end of your command phase. And at the end of your command phase, you can then move your heroes. And then we go into magic and shooting, which magic happens in shooting, and then combat if there's any. So the Wizard also has the voice of command ability, which on a 5-up will let a unit move as if it was given orders, but he fails that because it's a 5-up. So we end turn 1 scoreless. Now, so Empire's pushed up. So now we're at turn 2, and this is where we were when I noticed. I circled the hill again. Yes, they're still holding that hill. Chaos is able to get off. The Wizard's able to get off 1 set of orders with the Marauders before he fails his second command. He's on an 8. So he's an 8's a pretty good chance of getting an order off, but he's just not having a good time right now. I guess he needs to go back to military academy and learn how to issue orders. And then the General's able to get 2 units to move forward. So we're forming a battle line right here. And we're trying to put some pressure. So we got these 3 looking like they're matching up against these 3 units of halberds. And then we have 2 broken chunks up. We have the left flank and the right flank that needs to start catching up to handle these individual pieces. The Empire, the captain, starts off by pushing these crossbows further up. He's trying to get them again in range to shoot. So I'm guesstimating that's about 30 centimeters on this table. Then looks like we're trying to get the halberdiers to join them, and he rolls. He fails. So then the Wizard, he's trying to give an order, and he rolls double 6, which is a blunder. So when you roll double 6s, something weird or bad can happen. Warmaster's got a little chart. It's a D6 roll. In this case, the Pistoliers couldn't see anything really, so they don't move or do anything. And again, voice of command, nothing happens. So this is all the movement we get out of turn 2. And again, we're still scoreless. But we're starting to set up our shapes. So Empire's got this little wedge thing going. This hill is still a very strong point. Crossbows are trying to get in range, but all of our wing elements are still idle, still waiting to go. Now, this halberd unit right here in the forest is now defending that forest. So they need to, when you're talking about being hit in this game, everything hits each other on a 4-up. It's very easy. If you're defending an obstacle or defending a terrain piece, you actually get hit on a 5-up. So it makes it harder to be hit. So this really helps try to offset these units right here. What differentiates this is halberds have 3 attacks per stand. Marauders have 3 attacks per stand. Warriors get 4 attacks per stand. So it's really about throwing as many dice as you can at someone and pushing them back, which you're going to see. It's one reason why I love this game is you actually, in this game, push each other back and forth, and you can watch the army lines start to bend and break. And that's really appealing to me. All right, turn 3, we start to get some blood. The sorcerer. Okay, sorcerer, like, cool, we need to get these warriors on this hill moving forward. Oh, he rolls a 9 and fails again. So the sorcerer, 3 turns, has managed to get 1 unit to do anything. So again, I said, this is why I'm highlighting why people don't like the game as much. This is why. I personally love it because command and control is a big part of warfare, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. Because you have to respond. Is like, how are you going to respond when you have an entire right flank not doing anything? The general with his leadership of 9, we're able to get these warriors starting to move, these marauders starting to move into the woods. And then this warrior unit right here actually gets a move off. And then, so you can give a single unit up to 3 orders. It's -1 to your command each subsequent order. So it makes it harder and harder. Plus this range. Remember I talked about range increment. So the farther you are away, the harder it is. So this was a -2 to the roll. -1 because of the distance, because it was over 20 centimeters away from him. And -1 because it was the second order. So we needed a 7. But he got it off. And the warriors are going to come here and hit that halberd block. That's right there. And then that's pretty much what we got going. So we've got the warriors creating our wedge, and we have the empire that's got their wedge. So we're coming to a head now. The chariots on the left flank, this is what caused the general to fail. He needed a 7. He rolled a double 6, which is also a blunder, but generals in Warmaster can't blunder, so that's just a failed roll, and we move on. Now in combat, I did this wrong for a little bit, because this is what made sense to me. I do 2 things wrong in this turn when we played. Number 1, I gave the halberdiers defended bonus, but not the warriors. Because it made sense to me. The warriors are charging into the woods. The halberdiers were already set. They should have the bonus, and the warriors shouldn't have the bonus. In actuality, what I've read a couple rounds later was infantry units inside of woods counted as defended. So both sides would have been hitting on a 5-up. But I didn't do that on this turn, and you'll see the end result. Second, I'm so used to wounds carrying over that I was keeping track of wounds. So a warrior unit can take up to 4 hits before you take the base away. So if you took 2 hits, I put 2 tokens down. Wounds at the end of once the turn is over, any excess wounds get removed. So you start each turn with no wounds. So I'm doing that a little bit wrong here. And I will course correct towards the end of the game. But again, we're just kind of looking at how the game plays and just to kind of visualize it. And I am pointing out what I knew I goofed up. But again, 15 years ago, it's been a long time. And I am so used to the games doing the things I just described that it just felt natural. So in this case, the Chaos Warriors come in with 9 attacks. So they get 4, 8, and then the supporting unit behind them gives them +1 is 9. You normally get extra dice for charging, but not only charging in the open, which charging through a forest is not in the open. So you're not getting as many dice. And they need a 5-up to hit, and they managed to land 1 hit essentially. So the halberds have 8 attacks back, and they need a 4-up to hit, and they're going up against a 4-up save. The halberds end up doing 3 total hits to the warrior unit, And so because they did 3 hits to the one coming back on them, it's 3-1, but the halberds still have these 2 extra ranks. Excuse me, yeah, these 2 extra ranks. This is actually after the pushback. So there's still an extra rank of warriors that's not pictured at this exact moment. So it comes out to be 5-2. So the warriors lost by 3. And that's all you do for combat resolution. It's the number of hits plus how many supporting ranks you have, or supporting stands. And the loser has to fall back a number of dice in centimeters. So the warriors lost by 3, so they have to fall back 3d6 centimeters. So they fall back 11 centimeters. So they're going to push back, and they push back up basically to right around here. So there's a push. Okay. The halberdiers, because they won, can elect to hold their position, and because they're defending the woods, they don't have to move. They can also fall back if you wanted to separate, or you can pursue. Now, when you pursue, you can do a whole bunch more damage. In fact, as you'll see, the ability to pursue, depending on how far away your opponent runs, gives you a whole bunch of attacks extra. If a regiment ever falls back a distance greater than their base move, so for infantry, they can move 20 centimeters. So if these warriors were to have fled over 20 centimeters, they are destroyed. They only fled 11 centimeters. So the halberds elected to pursue. So they push up into the warriors again for a second round of combat. So you can fight 2 rounds of combat in one phase, basically. Now, in this case, the halberdiers still have their base attacks, but each stand gets an extra dice for pursuing, and each stand gets an extra dice for every 3 centimeters, full 3 centimeters that their enemy ran. So their enemy ran 11 centimeters. That's an extra 3 attack dice per stand. So they're getting 4 extra attack dice per stand. This gives this halberdier unit this time 16 attacks. So in this case, being aggressive and hitting them back, chasing them down, you're going to get a lot more casualties, or statistically you should. Whereas the warriors, they're going to have to turn around and they only do their normal. So in this case, they have 3 stands still, and they'll get their 9 attacks. So the halberdiers end up landing 8 of those 16 attacks and land 3 after all the armor saves. So the warriors have now taken 4 hits, and that's where this pop icon comes from. That back base is basically gone. So they've done 3 total. The warriors, with their 9 attacks, land 6 of their 9 attacks. And the Empire only has 6 up armor save. So they end up doing all 6 wounds, or hits in this, sorry. So the CR in this case, the Empire gets 3 hits through, and Chaos got, the Empire got 3 hits through, the Chaos Warriors got 6 through. Neither unit has support. So now the halberdiers have to fall back 3d6 centimeters, and they roll 11 centimeters, which is the average on 3 dice. So we take ourselves back to the original point of combat, and the warriors pursue. Now, the warriors have pursued, but they do not continue to fight. You only fight 2 rounds of combat. Last thing to point out. So that's all the combat in this turn. Our little spear point is hit. Last thing to point out is, if you remember that, how the game ends. The game ends when one side, or both, it can happen, hit their halfway point in stand count. Chaos has 26 stands, so once they hit 13, they're done. Empire has 38 stands, so once they hit 19, they're done. Right now, Chaos is down to 25. They've lost 1 stand, and Empire lost 2, so they're down to 36 stands. So we're still a far cry away from the end, but I wonder how long this game of Warmaster is going to last. I don't know. Let's look at what Empire does in turn 3. We can see that the Empire is a lot more productive with their orders. And I'm not going to go over all the individual orders. We can see that they get a lot of successful things off. So we get the Pistoliers to push up. We get this Halberdier block. The hero joins the second Halberdier block, and what they're going to do is they're going to charge in, and they get their orders off correctly. And this is wrong here. I was carrying wound over, and I should not have done that. But they're going to go ahead and push into that wounded warrior block. It's only got 2 stands left. So we have a Halberdier unit with 2 stands, and then we have a full block of 4 halberdiers, and we have a hero charging that lone Chaos Warrior unit, trying to flush that out of these woods. The general has this next unit of halberds move up. And you can see the hill starting to redeploy and start to move around. The general's issuing a bunch of orders, basically. The halberds in the back, we want to go ahead and start moving. He gets one order off, and this is actually where he fails. He gets one order off, and he tries to move him forward, and that fails. But before that time, the Hellblaster moves up. The halberdiers come off the hill, and the other guns move up to try to get better range. These halberdiers were the last thing he tried to give orders to. And the general, of course, went last to give orders, because when his orders fail, the whole command phase is over. But I'm going from left to right, so don't confuse that with the actual order of how things went in the game. The wizard was able to get the pistoliers and the guns to move up, and you can see the guns are going to try to create like a killing field here. All right. Now, in the middle of the table, the captain's going to lend one attack to his unit. Heroes do not wade through armies by themselves. That's not their job. But we can see this is a very productive combat. So we have 2 stands of warriors versus 2 halberd stands versus 4 halberd stands versus a captain. And the warriors are able to do a couple hits, but that's all. Whereas the halberds, they come back and end up winning that combat, as you would expect. They just have so many attacks. Actually, the Warriors only lost by 2. So when it's all said and done, the Empire manages to, well, because the Empire lands 3 hits, but they have these 2 extra ranks, which make the difference, because they both end up doing 3 hits apiece to each other, so it's a draw. But the Empire's 2 ranks back, or 2 stands, will help push them. So the Warriors will backtrack because they lost by 2, and we rolled an 11 again. That's the magic number. It's 3 in a row. So they will back up 11 centimeters. If they had contacted this Marauder unit back here, the Marauders would have had to choose to let them pass. If they choose to let them pass, they roll a dice, and on a d6, if they roll a 6, they're confused. And the unit retreating back also has to roll, and if they roll a 6, they're confused. In this case, 11 centimeters takes them about 3 centimeters in front of this unit, so it didn't matter. I'm just pointing out that pushing an enemy through their friends can cause confusion, which reduces the number of dice they can do. And also confusion means they can't receive orders or act off initiative in the command phase. So if you can confuse your enemy, you're going to basically freeze them. Now, the halberdiers push forward, and the captain runs forward. The warriors get 4 attacks on the damaged unit, which is the little Weedle unit here. They do 2 more hits. And the halberds, they get 9 base attacks. They get 4 supporting attacks. And then they end up getting 9 from the pursuit. So they got 22 attacks total. 22 attacks. So again, if you're pursuing, you can gain a whole bunch of attacks. And in this case, they end up rolling a bunch of hits, and that whole warrior stand is destroyed. So at this point, at the end of turn 3, we see the score is 140 to 35 in favor of Empire. Empire's sitting pretty, owning this block of woods here. They've got what looks like their center line right here is kind of stretched out. We have some gun support trying to move forward, where we have the enemy Marauders. They have the potential flank right here, but then they're giving up their flank to the front. So Chaos has to start getting these 2 warrior units up to support. And we have to start seeing something out of these flank elements. That's going to be a big thing. All right, turn 4, top of turn 4. What do we got? So Chaos Sorcerer goes to give some orders. He's like, all right, we need to get these, we need to get the warriors off the hill. Oh, look at that. He rolled a double 6. So the wizard again, blunders. Shocking, right? It was hilarious. Like, I think he got like 1 or 2 orders off the entire game. But with his blunder, he rolled a 6 on the chart. And because the warriors could see an enemy, they surged forward their movement of 20 centimeters. So it was like he got the order off. And the warriors move forward. And at the end of the command phase, you can see he'll end up moving over here to try to get his bubble going so he can get these guys to move, if he could actually get an order off. The general is able to get these warriors into the forest to help support these marauders against this block right here. So we have 2 dedicated combat units versus 1 dedicated combat unit and what's left of one, and a hero. So this will be an interesting combat. This right here will be a bloodbath in the forest. And crossbows aren't really they're not really. Well, you know what? Crossbows actually fight probably just as good as halberds. They hit on a 4. They have the same number of attacks. They just have no armor save instead of a 6-up. Doesn't really make much of a difference in my opinion, but I guess they can fight. These pistoliers are a wild card because these pistoliers can harass to the sides, but they are threatened by the chariot unit up here. All right, so Chaos has nothing else going for it at this point, and so we turn back over to the Empire. And as you can see, we have a lot going on. So the pistoliers, they're pretty much staying right where they are. I'm not sure why there's an arrow there. The guns move up, and the wizard will move behind the gunners. They're trying to get a bead on these guys. He's able to get the pistoliers to move, so now the pistoliers are going to put some weight on this flank. So they're really up against this. If they can keep this pinned back, that will help. One unit of light cavalry against a unit of light cavalry and infantry. If you can just keep them off the flank for a moment, that's probably going to be good. The guns are the halberds march forward to support here. So now we have a brigade. They brigaded up. I intentionally did this. I kept a centimeter just to distinguish, but these guys are now a brigade. These halberds were able to move off the side of the hill and form up here. So their ultimate goal is going to be to come over here and provide a centerpiece. Now, over here in combat, let's see what we got. We have 4 halberd stands. We have the 4 halberd stands and the 1 halberd stand in support that's left with the captain. They're going to take on 3 marauder stands and 3 warrior stands. So they charge forward. What ends up happening is the warriors, and this is where I go ahead and reverse it back, where I found the rule. It stated if you're in the trees, everyone hits on a 5. So everyone's hitting on a 5 at this point. So you notice if you're fighting in terrain, that means you're doing a lot less hits. So the warriors will end up doing 2 damage. The marauders are going to do 2 damage. The halberdiers, they come out and they roll like crap. They don't do anything to the marauders, which is their light target, and they manage to hit against the warriors. So the CR in that case is the Empire does a wound and has a support stand, so they score 2 points. Chaos ends up cranking out 4 hits, 2 support stands, so that's 6. So the halberdiers, excuse me, so 6-2. So we have a difference of 4. So the halberdiers are going to fall back 4d6 centimeters. So they're going to go back 16 centimeters. And they end up pushing through the crossbows, who let them through. So we have this combat going on where the warriors end up landing into the crossbows. So now this whole center, this whole chunk right here for the Empire is starting to swing in favor of Chaos. Even though Chaos has not been able to get a whole lot of damage going off or a lot of movement going off, they're fighting really well in this woods. And I'm trying to go through my notes, and the 2 rounds of combat actually were what pushed the halberds through here. So this whole halberd, this used to be 5 stands of halberds, and you can see in this image there's only 1. And that's because after 2 rounds of combat, they're taken down to 1, and the warriors push into the crossbows at the end of this turn. So they have pursued into the crossbows, and the crossbows let the halberds in. Neither side rolled confusion, but the crossbows are in a bad way. They're fighting Chaos Warriors. And the score right now is 140 to 105. So now we're starting to get into pretty much the end. What ends up happening is that crossbow unit gets mowed over. Let me go back real quick. Yeah. Crossbow unit ends up getting mowed over. And then the warriors pursue into the captain and the halberds. And so that whole side is deleted at that point. The chariots, and what happened was my slide got erased. So I missed the whole slide. So we're having the condensed version. The chariots charge into the pistoliers and basically do a number on the pistoliers. They take out 2 of the pistolier stands, which is why there's only 1 here, and then pursue back. And then in the Empire's turn, they're going to end up destroying this unit of Pistoliers right here. So they're going to totally wipe that out. Over here, the warrior unit that was here swept into the gunners, destroyed the gunners. So the Empire tries to throw some shots into the warriors. They manage a couple hits, but it's still really not enough to do much. The Pistoliers are able to form this flanking maneuver here. And Chaos, again, still... These guys never move the entire game. The Wizard moved up to try to do that Fire Blast through there, but he couldn't get that spell off and needed a 5-up. And this right here was the game. So what happened is once turn 5 for Chaos ended, Empire was down to 20 stands left because they ended up losing that giant brick of halberds right here and the crossbow unit and the gunner unit. And all they had left were like the Pistoliers. And once the chariots in combat destroyed that last Pistolier, Empire reached its stamina limit, its halfway point, and that ends the game. So we see the game ends 392 to 140. And at this time, the Empire goes ahead and withdraws from the field. And they created this little last bastion here. It would have been interesting to see how this works out in a scenario where the game didn't end off stamina, but you can have different scenarios like take and hold scenarios, etc. But you can see they create this little bunker right here, but they're off the hill and they would have been hit, let's say, by the Marauders would have come in. These Marauders could have come in. These Warriors would have come in. And then you have chariots that could have rolled under. Doesn't look good for the Empire at that point, but dice are dice. So, of course, then you have this Warrior unit. Probably would have swung down here as well. Yeah. When the Empire lost this woods and they lost all those units, that pretty much ended the game. So that is our final. Empire stamina is depleted. Chaos will take the field. All right. So that was Warmaster. A condensed version of Warmaster, where I'm giving the play-by-play. You're not actually seeing the things bounce back and forth. That's one thing I don't know that photo battle reports are as good for, or maybe if I do more of those, I think what I want to do is actually have the different battles as they're taking place, have screenshots so you can watch the units back and flow. That's the part that I love about Warmaster, is watching the battle line stretch and come up. When you're looking at it turn to turn like that, you just go from like one screen to an extreme version of another. But a lot happened in between there that was not captured. But anyhow, let me know your thoughts about Warmaster. Let me know what you thought about the battle report. If you want to see more of those types of things, I do really like Warmaster. I do really like Hail Caesar. The game that my studio is working on is based. It's got a lot of basis in like Hail Caesar, and so that game is a fantasy heavy metal game, and I'm hoping to have that soon. The idea with that is it's an Unreal game, and on top of that, I want to have STLs for sale because I have no interest in stocking actual product. I think we're in the age of 3D printing enough as it is, where we can just sell the 3D models and have you print them out. But I am interested in your opinions and input. Thank you again for tuning in, watching. If you liked it, give me a like. If you want to subscribe, give me a subscribe. I plan on having more content for Warmaster, Warhammer, the old world, and wargaming in general on a fairly regular basis. So I look forward to future discussions. Until then, I'll talk to you later.